created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio or text, and then there's big metaverse buzz. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
Oh, that AI juices me up every time.
Every time. Does it every time.
Let's go.
I know you got it in you, Bobby. I know it's late at night, but you got it. Come on, let's
go. Okay, we got it over with.
Now, we've been doing this podcast for a long time, and we have a core mission here to get the military community to really pay attention to what's happening in the AI space. And I understand, just like me, I have no time to pay attention to other things. But if I have to pay attention to one community, that'd be my favorite community, the military community, right? So I do as much as I can through the podcast, through the discussion, by giving time outside of AI space to talk to the military community. And that's very fulfilling, because I know in the military, mission focused. You're mission focused. You have nothing else to talk about, worry about. Just focus on your mission. And when you come out of the military, all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, there's this whole world full of AI, and I have no idea about it. So do my part a little bit, right? Me and Lucky, Bobby, have been doing this for a while. And of course, today's episode, we want to focus on military community, right? I kind of did this little trick with Masako where I said, like, how do we get the best title for this podcast? And she said, oh, how about M.I.A. with AI? It's a bunch of acronyms. Who doesn't love acronyms in military, right? So we want to say, like, if you're not focusing on AI, not thinking about AI, we want to give you some nuggets of knowledge, so that way you can kind of, get a refresher maybe, right? Get that information flowing into your head to say, like, okay, where do I apply AI to? So this is something that I think goes without saying. There's way too much happening in the AI space, right? How do you keep up with it? You probably can look at this podcast and say, like, wow, array of discussions we're having is unbelievable, right? Last few episodes, we just talked about the why of just the parents, right? We talked about, like, danger of the kids using AI, and how the parents have to be vigilant, how the parents have to have some ability to ask those questions to get the information out of the kids, because kids and parents, they speak two different languages as it is. Now you put AI in the middle, all of a sudden kids are not really discussing anything with their parents because it's technological, right? So technological field advances, parents are falling behind, the kids are getting advanced. So I think we've narrowed it through a digital refugee and a digital migrant and digital native concept, right? So just in a few episodes, you can see the spectrum of conversations we're having, right? And I'm very thankful that I have subject matter experts like Bobby, right? Army veteran, Army Reserve. I can say a whole lot of things that he's done, but some of them are probably not mentionable in public. And of course, I have my cybersecurity guru, Lucky, just an amazing instructor. So we are doing what we do very well, I would say. Right? At least I tell myself I do it very well, don't I, Bobby?
Oh, excellent. You're the best.
We try to educate, but we fail at educating until we get people to get curious, right? And that's what I learned from Bobby. It's not about educating; it's about making them curious. Have them ask more questions than they first started. So, this first part of the conversation, I think we're going to talk about what's latest in our neck of the woods about AI, right? So let me go around the screen here. Bobby, what are you thinking about AI this week? Because I know things are changing so dramatically.
A huge thing for me is understanding AI in the workforce. For service members, what does that mean? A lot of the tools that they use to change.
a lot of the specialties that people train and grow and execute in have changed. So we've moved from the previous algorithm decision support tools, or DSTs, into real AI-based stuff that can give you a lot of information in a short amount of time for decision support. So everything from military intelligence to logistics to command and control systems, all of the above, healthcare. There are major initiatives across all of the services, touching pretty much every field. So what does that mean for the service member now? And what does it mean when you get out? How does that translate when you get out, right? Or what's the crosswalk for that? So it's important that we understand what the tools are, how they work, and then how can they be applied in the civilian sector? Because ultimately, no one stays in the military past a certain age or, past a certain retirement date. So how do I take those skills that I've learned and in real time apply them to what's going on in the real world? And that really comes down to understanding the underlying technologies and mastering the core skill set, and then it translates from place to place to place. So.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking, Lucky, for AI space careers?
Well, it just, there's, like you said, there's a lot of change within AI, and how I think the pressure a few years ago was, how do we make AI work for us? And now we have all these use cases where it's working for us, and we found areas where there is data that can help us make decisions, and so, a big part of it has been the growth of AI in the past 3 years with like ChatGPT. And then how do we leverage that kind of stuff, for our day-to-day or generative AI, or, data, we start getting into things that are more less in front of us, like data science and how decisions we make because of data. For example, we talked about our kids a little bit, and the fact that they're digital natives. I outside of careers, we need to be able to teach our kids that data, analytics, and AI all work hand in hand. And then the more we can train and teach our kids, everything that we do, whenever we click on something, is feeding the algorithm, then, maybe without getting into privacy, we can teach our kids to be able to understand how to be safer online, and then even that, add to our careers. How can AI help us secure or create security around us? So, AI versus AI type stuff. So, it's a changing world.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of military guys transitioning out of military, it's a village that you're leaving to go to another village. I mean, that's how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will say, well, I left the base and I still work in the base commissary. Well, no, you actually left the village mentally, right? It's not a physical village anymore. It's a uniform. As soon as you take it off, you're in a whole nother group of people, right? So you can go for DoD contract, you can go for trucking, you can go for project management, and you can go be a CEO, solopreneur, entrepreneur, or you can go work for one of those government contracting, DIBs, right? Defense Industrial Base. It's a different village. And these villages all operate differently with different missions and different focuses, right? So speaking of, a village, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to have a good military, right? Good weapons training, good training in, how use of force applies, and all sorts of tools that you need, to be trained in the tank. I don't know. Tank, for example, like chains on a tank. What happens to that? Somebody has to put it together at the end of the day, right? So you have all sorts of ways to raise and train individuals, and they don't happen overnight. So with AI, one of the things that a lot of people don't have insight about, because you said data analytics piece, is that it literally took a village of people to raise that AI in the form that you are seeing it today. Mm-hmm. So that DST, that decision science capability, that decision making, augmenting your decisions, this system was not mature on day one. It's a poor system that was delivered to a certain amount of people, and those certain amount of people raised it over time, and it expanded to something you call Chat GPT today, right? So these AI systems are really being built behind the scene as we speak, right? So one of the reasons it's really hard to keep up with AI newsfeed is because there's so many AIs coming out repeatedly, right? This week, you can talk about A2A protocol, which is agent to agent protocol, which is a massive shift in what they've been talking about for AI for 3 years now, right? Since ChatGPT. But if you know anything about AI 10 years back, this was a fiction. This was something that everybody said it's almost impossible to do because we don't have the hardware for it. So behind the scene, you're getting this hardware delivered. Behind the scenes, you're getting this data that are trained. Behind the scenes, they're eliminating all sorts of software to make this software work, right? This coding and programming, and then machine learning. All these little tools are coming together, and careers are shifting. Well, I'm not going to get into that because I got somebody from my military community to come and present the military community. A good guy, very knowledgeable guy. I'm going to have him discuss his career paths because his careers are going to dramatically shift. Not that it hasn't already. I'm talking about there's another shift coming, right? And it will continue to come because, well, let's just leave it to Stephen because I will introduce Stephen here in a second, and I would love to see how Stephen will describe it, and then we'll take his lead into rest of the conversation. And there he is, the man of the hour.
Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. It's nice to chat with you. It's fun hearing knowledgeable folks talk about how new technology is impacting their whole career, but they can take the context of their experience and shape where it's going. So I'm excited to be here with y'all. Y'all been able to do some really cool things with this podcast. So I'm excited. I appreciate you having me, Steve.
Oh no, the appreciation is coming from me because I've known you for 5 years now, before COVID, and we've learned a few things together.
Where's the time go?
Oh my easy.
And I'm expecting Masako to come in here and meet you as well because we're all Bunker Lab cohorts, right? So you have, and I'm going to introduce you for what I know, but you also have to introduce yourself because you're going to keep it humble. But you're a badass, so we're gonna, I'm gonna do the introduction first because you are very knowledgeable in business, like as in leadership, the business organization, how to, support every part of the organization, and that's because of your military background. But you're on the street, like you're literally out there doing what we can talk about in this podcast. But you're out there executing with the leadership, right? You're working with teams, and I've seen your LinkedIn profile. My goodness, it's like one of the most impressive LinkedIn profile I've seen. So you're the right person to talk about this shift in what you are seeing today versus what we have seen 5-10 years ago, right? So let's jump into it. Tell us about yourself and tell us about your background, where you've been, and where you're heading.
No, I appreciate that. I take everything that you just said as a very nice compliment. So I see if I appreciate that. For context, my objective each time I'm on one of these platforms is to provide not only the audience, but the folks that we're talking to like real time right now, the best possible way to challenge what they have known and what was their context. So for instance, whenever you get out of the military, since we're talking to the military community primarily, while you were in something as simple as just looking for a home, you went to housing. And then when you navigated the transition of no longer going to housing, it's a fundamental shift in the way you make decisions. And I'm sure everybody who's listening here understands a little bit of what I'm talking about. You literally have to go through that type of the transition where you're no longer dependent upon an NCO or an officer corps or potentially even your peers, because none of that exists anymore. And so you have to build yourself from the ground up. And quite frankly, I think that there's not a better group of people within a community, perhaps maybe former athletes, fit into the criteria of people who can fit in a community and build themselves back up really well. So, I just happen to be biased that people who can navigate the transition successfully from a military career, whether it's as a civilian, a contractor, or in uniform, and you can successfully navigate that transition to be into the private sector, you're going to be able to go and develop the depth that you need to in your respective domain to navigate this next transition. But on top of that, you're also going to be able to do what any good NCO does, and that is you learn from the old and you try to learn from the new, and then you try to take from the old and make it new, and then take from the new and mix a little bit of old, so you don't lose that tradition and that core value as well. So I think we're in it's an interesting time. I also try to learn things the same way that my children do. So to be specific, my 10-year-old, I encouraged him to start using ChatGPT because I was interested in how he was going to interact with it when it came to developing opportunities in the reselling space as a 10-year-old. What is he going to be interested in trends wise in the consumer markets for people that are his age? He never wants cash. He always wants, V-Bucks for Fortnite or something to that effect. So if you can use tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or any other type of generative AI application that gives you the user interface necessary to go interact with the models, you're going to run into some situations where people are going to work with it differently. And so that's not new news to this particular crew. I think that teams all perform that way. I don't want an offensive lineman out there catching passes. I don't want a wide receiver come in there trying to do a crackdown block on the backside for, if we're doing a pulling guard. I don't want that guy out there. DK Metcalf can go catch touchdown passes 60 yards down the field. I don't want him, running the same play as a pulling guard, if that makes sense. So Very similarly, how people are interacting with AI, you can develop and architect a team to a certain extent, depending upon, the personas that are around you. So I'll pause real quick.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I wanted to kick off the conversation. Yeah. In a nutshell, I do think that, I was just doing some bouncing off of what I wanted to talk about the ChatGPT, and it was giving me some good feedback back based off of the prompts that I was giving it. And AI hasn't, it's been around for a very long time. So it's not like this is new. The capability that GPUs and now potentially what quantum is going to bring to the table have enabled, what's going to be a net new reality, especially when you talk about an agental-based approach, or you have your graph RAG data, or you have just simply, to use Bobby's point a little bit earlier, just populating a corpus of data, whether it's a data warehouse or a database, et cetera. If you can build an adequate data pipeline and get access to that data, you can have a chat with that data experience that's going to be significantly more performative than just asking a benign model how to decipher an acronym, which, that's a little bit like what Lucky was talking about before we started recording. Yeah. That domain expertise of 20 to 30 years, what exists between somebody's ears, like that needs to be downloaded in a way into some sort of corpus where you can have that chat with the experience, and then use that to essentially base how your graph or your matrix is set up, so you can have an adequate agental-based approach. Again, I said I would stop and pause. No. That was 4 minutes ago, so I'll shut up for a second.
No, I think this is like, look, you can have all the interest in the world, but your interest now relies on AI. I'm sorry to say that so brashly, but that's how I feel. Like, if you have any interest, you have to incorporate the AI to it. It's just not about career anymore, right? Career is one thing; it pays you a bill, right? But you want to be out in the wilderness for a few days. You want to go ask ChatGPT how to do your wilderness stuff. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to have ChatGPT for 3 days, so you get all the knowledge refreshed in your head. Because that's the just-in-time training, on-demand training that we probably didn't have 10, 15 years ago. Because Google is not a great friend if you just want to get like a refresher on what it is that you need to know. But a website is very limited as far as what it can tell you. So what Lucky just mentioned earlier before the conversation started is a knowledge management, the KM piece. Super important topic. We've been talking about this for hundreds of years, but it's not possible. And it's not possible as of, well, now that we have AI, is it possible now? Well, we only way to find out is to do it, right? Because knowledge management, another word for it is data management. Manage the data properly, like you said, the pipeline, right? Everybody's a plumber these days. Everybody's going to the pipeline looking for data. If there's no data, get out and go find another pipeline, right? And bring that pipeline in and see how you can make that ETL happen, right? So
we call it
you're right on target with that, buddy.
See, if I call it speaking SAPs, the way that SAP and their transactional databases and ERPs contextualize data. I mean, unless you can speak it, it's like how do you make sense of that corpus? And you have to have somebody well versed in the systems. We're running into this a little bit in the business world when folks are talking about migrating from an existing on-prem infrastructure to something that is more cloud native, right? So if you have cloud native capability, then essentially you can leverage all the tools and goodness of things like Azure or AWS or GCP, Oracle, you name it. But the goodness that exists there, it's difficult to replicate, and you don't want to just lift and shift into the cloud. Maybe that's the right way to do it in the beginning, but you also want to break apart different pieces and go through, okay, well, if I had a SQL database on-prem, do I need to do any type of transformations with SSIS or SSRS? And what needs to be translated? Can I use ADF? Well, I mean, you're talking about a custom fit use case where if you don't have the domain expertise or the knowledge, you can hit a corpus or a model like 4.0 or GPT-4 Turbo, or even some of the newer models that are small, and give it some context and ask for the right way to prompt it. And you can develop, a very succinct project project roadmap. And, I feel like to a certain extent, when you talk about the military, like I was chatting with ChatGPT a little bit about, the way that the human in the loop supervisor, like I thought it was fascinating the way that it would say, there's a human in the loop supervisor need in safety critical or national security AI systems. Humans must oversee and intervene where needed. Well, that's exactly like sending your troops or your Marines out to the field and not having a corporal with them. It's like a whole bunch of junior Marines are going to go out there and we're going to successfully operate a range without range safety officers. It's like, no. You got to think about this and treat the individuals like, okay, if I have an individual, how can I create an agent, potentially have that agent behave like the way that this individual is supposed to be trained, and then have that agent give you context on how to adjust your plan before you go do the field exercise. Does that make sense?
So you're saying that we're going to have a GO officers and we're going to have a bunch of enlisted agents.
100%.
Ranked E5 agents and O10 agents,
yep,
operational,
100%.
Tactical, and strategic.
That's what I see happening. It's and the reason why is because, like, if you take the example of what some general officers would like to accomplish, which is they want to be able to conduct fire maneuver with satellites. I'm just using this as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just using this as an example. I'm saying it will happen. Just using this as an example. If they could have their way, that would be interesting to do, right? Well, you can't really conduct that fire maneuver in a satellite because the controls don't exist in order to take that. It's not armed that way. So how do you, without investing a fortune in infrastructure, go and perform those tests? Well, you have to have digital twin and digital engineering environments where you can actually have digital twins of the assets themselves operating in a way where you can conduct those tests. Well, I mean, again, that goes back to a custom fit use case for generative AI and asking those models to go and help. When I say those models, I'm talking about engaging with those models responsibly in a contained resource group in the corpus of data using, managed customer keys and access to people who are significantly better at this, like Lucky is on the security side than I am. I'm just a knuckle dragging Marine who has some good ideas from time to time, and most of them are bad, and I'm told often that they are, so that's fine. I'm just simply stating that those things, you can have the input from all those subject matter experts to go and architect your project plan, but you need it's like Xbox has done this for how long now? I mean, we've been playing video games. Why not have a real world scenario where you can identify different COAs using these resources that are available to us now, fueled by GPU capability?
So you're the knuckle-dragging Marine that said the word digital twin. I bow down to you for that. You said the word digital twin. So we all love you forever now. So Bobby, Bobby, what's your thoughts going through your head? Because he's hitting on some points that might sound technical to people, but it's easily graspable, right? Like even if you don't know what GPU is, you can kind of imagine it's a hardware that enables things, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think Stephen is hitting that point. But I think he's trained. He's a trained Marine that's hitting those right points. So, what do you think, Bobby?
No, I think that Stephen, thank you for that. You've touched on some very important things. As humans, we've forgotten the value that we add, and that if we use a tool properly, it can help us. If we become dependent on it in a way that's unhealthy, it can hurt us. If you found me in the middle of the woods and told me, give me 10 telephone numbers of people who can help you, I could not, where I used to remember tons of telephone numbers. So as we look at artificial intelligence or any tool, right, we still want to maintain neuroplasticity. I'm no neuroscience, but I know that if you don't use it, you lose it. So for example, understanding that artificial intelligence is not it's not going to do all the thinking for you, because you bring things to the table. Think of it as the guide on the side. You should be pushing your AI to help you shape better solutions, not just to give me a solution, right? What AI doesn't know is the art piece of it. They say military science is now, you go a lot of places, they call it military art, because it is both a science and an art, how you apply it, right? So you and I both play chess, but we do not play chess equally. You will probably beat me. Facts, right? So we both understand the rules for how and when we apply the rules. So I say, like when I teach, I start off with, when the advanced group, I start off with AI as the tool that they use for various subjects, where they get an answer. And I was like, great. Now, the problem in a lot of universities was they're using AI. No, the professors need to update on how they teach and what they're expecting of students. And here's your AI answer. Now I need you to go make it better. Find the flaws. Find how what it told you is a starting point, not an ending point. Push it. If you're going to spend money on these tokens, make it count. Right? So those are the kind of things I say as we move forward. And Stephen, I think you're right on point. Thank you so much for that.
For sure. You're right. You're right. There is one thing that I am concerned about, to be honest with you. If I'm as younger folks' brains develop, there's this concern that the overall reliance on, for instance, just not being bored or avoiding boredom, jumping right to a cell phone. I mean, that's going to be at scale when you talk about folks who aren't adequately preparing their children for the risks associated with relying on AI to generate the answers, as opposed to how much value each one of us learn from doing things incorrectly. You really don't learn what you need to learn by doing things right all the time. I call it like the value of the dissenting voice in the room, somebody who's going to be disagreeable in a way without being, a jerk about it. Maybe they are. Either way, it's there's value in that. I don't necessarily agree with your point, or I don't know if I see it the same way you do. It's the same thing as learning to do something incorrectly, and then the context that you get from thinking through why that didn't happen. You're almost robbed of it if you're given the answers ahead of time.
Exactly.
There's a whole I really like. There's a TED talk done a long time ago, Asif, about like the video game theory about how you take a test and you end up with a 60, and so then all of a sudden the feelings that a kid gets with performing terribly against his peers, as well versus somebody starting a video game and then accumulating points as they go along, the confidence that they get, the difference between those two learning mechanisms. Learning's occurring, but one of them could be detrimental if you're trying to always be perfect. You can potentially get a lot more from it by earning those points. And so I do think that if education systems need to significantly review the use of AI as opposed to for their students, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the learning that happens in the journey, right? and you realize that it was never the destination. It was always about the journey.
100%.
So how do we bring that into the future using a logic-based system to ask it to help us with our creativity? So those are really important things to help us enhance our ethics, right? Because of the way the design of neural networks are mimicked after our own, but we got our own challenges as a species, right? So how do we, as we build and as we move forward, I think recently a young lady went to jail because she had an issue with another young lady in school, and she used AI tools to build a profile and then threatened to bomb the school. The young lady she framed, and we're talking middle school, went to jail. Luckily, the police cybersecurity people were smart enough when they were doing all their digital forensics to figure out some things don't align, and the chances that this girl had intentionally made these mistakes, the person who they thought did the crime, made them dig deeper. But what if they purely used AI-based tools and be like, this is your person, send her to jail? So,
Lucky, what are you thinking? I know this is your favorite topic. We all
This is so many things that I want to. Yeah, I agree, Stephen. You are spot on. I believe that learning should be somewhat painful. There should be some scarring. You need to fail a dozen times before before you get it right once, and then when you get it right that one time, okay, the lights come on, and now you've figured something out. And life is a journey, and you learn from just making mistakes. And then we're robbing people. Like, say for example, and we talked about this before in another podcast. I instruct in teaching different languages, and back in the day, people would get frustrated. It was scary. And then all of a sudden, when you get to it and you get to work, all of a sudden it's not so scary. Then you develop that you're, trust and you're comfortable with the language. Well, now Chat GPT is going to say, yeah, I got it all for you, and then at some point, we're going to, like you said, we're going to come reliant upon these different mechanisms, and we're not going to have our own way of being able to delineate or work in these areas, because we've been so dependent on AI. And I'll give you one example. You guys remember back in the day before you started a road trip, what would you do? We brought this up. I would stop at Walmart and get a map scope, right? And all of us would start to kind of figure out which way we're going to go. And then that would take about 20, 30 minutes of your trip before, or sometime before you left, you had one in your car from the previous trip, but you figure out, okay, this is the direction we're going to go to get where we're going to get from, family vacation, Florida, California, wherever, Chicago. Now, we have phones, and that GPS just guides us. But now, if I talk to kids now that are learning to drive, they'll never learn to just drive without something telling them where to go. And what is that? It's like, okay, I know where I'm going, but kids nowadays, they have no clue. They're so reliant, and honestly, some of us, we have too. We so reliant on the GPS device, the AI behind it, that just guides. But we just gave up the keys and said, just take us. Well, that's small use case could now be, AI is going to provide that service across many different areas. And the kids now that are, I worry about kids because I'm a father, and they're going to become so reliant upon these different mechanisms that they won't ever be able to be creative in some fashion, because they've been given everything. And I think that's a detriment to our, the kids that we're doing now. But AI is definitely, if we use AI for data science, it can transform, the careers, people, create new jobs, change the way we do things, improve, augment the way we can provide services, provide answers faster. But, because we're having such speed, is it a detriment to, another generation? And so I love AI, but we need to be able to keep and, have that human in the loop and be able to say, okay, we need to be able to have someone that can step in and say, okay, within this data, yes, this data gives us a lot of information that sets us up to make a good decision, but is it the right decision? It's a decision, but is it the right decision to make? Does it fit the landscape, and what will it do? I mean, do we see past this decision? Because AI is going to be making decisions for us, but is it, again, the human in the loop? Is it the right one? Do we need to, instead of using a hammer, do we need to break a scalpel out and say, okay, outside of AI, we need to be able to see this world with the human eye, and we need to make sure that we have that. And so, again, I agree with you 100%. Stephen. You know, we need to have that human in the loop to be able to delineate and separate. Okay, you know, how we make the decisions are the right decisions.
I think I want to put a knowledge nugget at this point that I think anybody in the military community who's listening, veteran community, military spouse, and military affiliate, or whatever the case is, Stephen and Bobby, you guys hit on two things that I think is super important for us to reverse engineer, right? And this is where I'm going with this knowledge nugget piece, is that when somebody says, hey, Asif, and I think Bobby will agree with me, he kind of goes in the same direction, lucky you too. Steve, where do we start, right? Where do we start with AI? At the very beginning of the conversation, we talked about the fact that if you have a passion for something, if your domain expertise is that, you start from there. You do not start with where you're not. Where you're not is in data. Where you're not is in AI. Where you're not in is in machine learning, right? You're not in any of these technical things. If you think you are non-techie, own it and just start in non-techie with your domain expertise. Because what's going to shift is not AI. The shift is going to happen inside of your domain expertise. So you have a starting point, which is your domain expertise. But if you have to do one thing that I've been telling people, it's like you just don't have time like I do. Well, I did, not anymore. I have kids. I don't have time to study all day long. 10 years ago, I went through just all sorts of getting smacked around, mistakes, fallouts, right? Just disappointment. I'm talking about not knowing what I'm talking about most of the time, right? It just happened because I didn't know enough. I was starting off. I was in the military for a long time, didn't do anything technical really, other than physical security technology, right? So I come out, I'm just like, yeah, I can do ethical hacking. That's fine, right? Because it's pretty much the same thing I did in the military. I stopped people from penetrating into the base. I can learn how to, stop people from penetrating into the system. So ethical hacking, pen testing, all this stuff. Really, thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know. I wasn't the domain expert of that field. It just sounded similar, right? Mm-hmm. So again, where do you start? You start with domain expertise. Whatever your domain expertise is, bring technology into it, right? And then think of these 3 steps, which I think I used to say 2, but I'm going to add the 3rd piece today because Stephen hit the digital twin into the ballpark, right? Because I always said, you're going to have to jump in advanced. Don't jump in thinking like I'm going to stubborn little by little. No, I'm going to dare you to do something that you probably will appreciate me because you're going to save yourself 10 years into your journey, right? One is digital twin. That is something that every domain expertise will have to have going forward. They just don't know it yet. They don't call it that yet. And they sometimes call it dashboard. They call it reference model, virtual prototyping, AR, VR, MXR, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have digital twin in your domain expertise. That one piece I didn't really tell people about because I thought it was too advanced. But I think these days it's getting so much faster and closer because of NVIDIA's digital twin of the whole planet. NVIDIA's giving away open source digital twin capabilities. I think it's just going to happen very rapidly. So I'm glad, Stephen, you brought that up. Thank you so much for that. But the other 2 pieces that I would say start advanced and reverse engineer into something chewable, something that you can bite on, right? Yes. It's kind of like recognizing the elephant, right? See the elephant, eat the elephant, right? But the other 2 pieces is ethical hacking and digital forensics. Mm-hmm. Digital forensics will drive you into such an advanced mode that you will know this is not for you, but you're going to find something that you're going to start reverse engineering from. And as somebody who's thinking about a career into AI, I don't think you want a career into AI. You just want to hold on to your domain expertise and build your career with AI for your domain expertise.
Right.
But unless you're jumping in, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying don't feel intimidated by AI, because curiosity brings you closer, where fear takes you further away, right? So if you want to get curious, look into these 3 topics: digital twin, digital forensics, and ethical hacking. Because when you're hacking, you will know the value of data. If you're thinking about hacking, you will know the value of data, because the hackers, why would a hacker spend 400 hours, 4,000 hours trying to hack into your system? What's so valuable about your data? You don't see it, but if you know one thing about ethical hackers, they're looking for aggregation of data. And once you see the picture where your data fits into the aggregation, you get a picture about your data that you're like, I got to protect this like it's my kid, because that's my data portfolio that's going to turn into $1 billion enterprise in coming decades, right? Ethical hackers are looking for your data so they can aggregate it with other data, one piece, but you can reverse engineer something chewable, something that you can personalize for your domain expertise. The other piece of it is the digital forensics. Now, I was not particularly a fan of digital forensics, because I'm trying to prevent attack. I'm not trying to figure out what would happen with the attack. But this is my favorite, because I got so wrapped up in digital forensics that I was just like, forget Linux, forget ethical hacking. I'm just going to digital forensics. So based on digital forensics, you understand what does it take to run not an AI system, just a plain boring IT system that just says, here's an email, do you want to read it? Right? Plain boring AI system, an IT system. And you can look from digital forensics perspective and say, piece by piece, each zeros and ones, how did it get to that email?
Mhm.
Digital forensics is such an intricate process of understanding that I guarantee you're going to find something in digital forensics that's going to catch your attention. And you're going to say, my domain expertise doesn't have that. I'm going to take this piece and add that to my domain expertise. Now, this is why I'm getting very excited about talking about this thing, because I have found so many things that got me so excited about digital forensics, because I don't know anything about digital forensics, but I know enough to say, I love semiconductor chips, right? Part of the digital forensics was to look through the hardware and find layers of burn in hardwares, and say, what's happening here? Why did this piece get burned? What happened? You're trying to understand what happened to the electronic device. I loved it, because you realize what does it mean to put electricity through a hardware, and what are the volts doing inside the hardware. I didn't know anything about that until I did digital forensics, right? So digital forensics, your ethical hacking, these are advanced, but I think if you start with advanced, you save a lot of time as you reverse engineer into something biteable, chewable, something that you can say, this slim piece of information here, I want to take this and I want to own this one, right? I'm not a techie, but if I have to learn anything technological, I want to learn something here, right? And then bring that back to my domain expertise. And digital twin, my God, Stephen, we can talk hours and days about digital twin, because it's as applicable as AI is, right? It's as wide as the spectrum of data, but I will let you risk it, and maybe you can talk about something like that. But I think we're capturing a picture here where we are. But what we need to talk about is the fact that the careers, the way we do our day-to-day operation, like you said, your kids are using ChatGPT. What's going to happen to the workspace? Are we working remotely? Are we working remotely as in I sit on the dock and I drive that ship that is thousands of miles away? I'm in San Diego flying a drone that's in Australia.
Mm.
But drone that's in the water, not in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I'm flying a drone that's in the water, but it's carrying cargoes of 80,000 billion tons. You know what I mean? So let's talk about that a little bit more, because the career side of things is very interesting. What's your thought on that, Stephen?
So it's a good segue, because rewind the clock back 4 or 5 years. If we had just been having a similar conversation, we would be frustrated with each other, because we wouldn't have any understanding of ChatGPT wouldn't be a thing, right? It's just it didn't exist. OpenAI was largely built, under the cover. That's a whole different topic. You can go into the history of how that came about, but it's difficult to really understand how careers will change. I do think that when you look at the structure of how we're taught and the structure of opportunities, I do think that there's something in the way that some of these models were created, that if you ask the right questions, you can reveal some of the some of the answers, meaning asking individual models context and questions around how they would take the structure of the military and then transition that training environment into here's what's coming next in terms of an opportunity. And so I sent you on LinkedIn, Asif, just kind of a summary of like 7 roles of career paths where veterans may thrive in the age of AI agents and MCP, right? Or so that AI mission planner, a multi-agent operations manager, that human in a loop supervisor that we just talked about. It's interesting you had talked about the ethical hacking component, because number 3 is an ethical AI compliance officer or rules of engagement architect. And this is talking about in industry, right? So you could be working on the flight line at Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa one day, you go through separations. 3 weeks later, you could be working for a company as a rules of engagement architect or an ethical AI compliance officer. You could be a number 4 would be an agent simulation or training designer, which I think is pretty cool. Number 5 is digital twin analyst and agent oriented systems integrator. Number 6 would be an autonomous systems operation lead, whether it's on the defense side or on the Fed Civ side. So think like, how can you take the domain expertise of the NNSA, for instance, the Department of Energy, all the documentation and years of experience that they have just outside of the context of the research arm, but like that whole arsenal there, like, oof, is there an autonomous systems operation lead that you can take your domain expertise running, operations in country somewhere, and then use that project management based experience coupled with your agent that you built or that is provided to you from your federal agency to go and serve as on contract to go and architect solutions here. That's one thing. And then last but not least, AI safety and reliability technician. So we run into this quite a bit. I was sitting in a conference 2 or 3 years ago, and they were ragging a little bit on like object recognition capability of AI models. And they're like, this vision model, here's how they describe it. Oh, it doesn't even know what it is. Right. What they were saying is the context needed in that vision model to recognize the object and subsequently be able to adequately provide information and context back to the prompt provider. Like that system wasn't efficient enough for it to be a thing. Well, now it is. And not only is it a thing, there are phenomenal platforms out there that can use either existing images or they can use the DALL-E model like a synthetic. So synthetic AI, they have a platform called Rake where they can do surveillance. And Bobby, shut your ears off just for a second if this scares you, just because military in government, it can use geospatial data, it can use object recognition, but it can also use your prompts to create an AI generated image to then go and search for that image in its satellite imagery. Like it's fascinating, like the way that things have advanced. But the power that an individual, using a tool like that ethically and for law enforcement and or to assist in the execution of a mission or exercise, super powerful. And it absolutely is impacting mission planning at scale right now.
Yeah, I think that what you said is key as far as understanding how tools affect us, and we're supposed to take the knowledge away from it, not it to be our body of knowledge. A younger version of me that calls me dad was in the 82nd Airborne, and he got an award for taking a small element and basically capturing a huge element, right? And I was like, well, congratulations, son. That's pretty great. And he's like, no, it's not great. And I was like, well, explain. And he was telling me how he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed for the general that gave him the award. He was embarrassed for his commander. He said, if these old people had a decent score of Call of Duty, they'd have seen exactly what I was doing. I didn't even think it was work because it was so, I was like, what? So I get it. You know what I mean? So the thing is, being in any branch or any business, being disconnected from what's relevant now, what people are doing now, can leave you at a disadvantage. So he had a huge element, him and just his squad had a huge element surrendering. And instead of celebrating, they were like, I think I joined the wrong service. And they were in the 82nd Airborne. So I'm just saying. So
Well, guys, I'm fascinated by everything we talk about every time, and we always add value. And this is what we're trying to do: is educating the folks out there that are thinking, what about AI? How about AI? Why AI? There's so many things we can say, but Stephen, you're just adding the value on all three object here, because through these missions that we are seeing so far away, yet we have a good grasp and control over using satellite imagery. How about a satellite that's also a weapon, right? Like, we're talking about a whole lot of things that we previously wouldn't talk about, right? The fact that you have a digital twin of this whole planet, it's a huge game changer. That ability to have a content and context to context deliverable, that's something that we didn't do before because we visualized it, but we didn't have the hardware for it. But now we have the hardware, now we have the data, now we have the software, now we have the train sets. Everything is just kind of that three stars lining up, right? So I know we are talking about something that we cannot cover in less than an hour, but it's also time to go to sleep and give our brain a break.
Sounds good to me.
But before you go, Steven,
the argument some of the people I talk to in the morning, they're like, I don't think you ever woke up. So you go back to sleep, buddy. No, I'm kidding. It's not quite
before you go, please tell us about how it is that we can engage with you. What are some of the businesses that you are engaging with? What topics are you covering? We want to hear about contact.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So anybody that's listening to this podcast, first of all, you got to subscribe. So if you're not subscribed yet, you're in the wrong. Don't use an agent to try to go write your review. Go to Apple, press follow, subscribe. Steve probably is savvy enough to where you can, has a Patreon set up to where he's got some money, received. So donate some $5. If you learn something from this episode, go back and write the review and say, here's what I learned. And thank you, Steve. Your price of admission was simply just to leave that review. So go and follow him. And if you're listening to this podcast, reach out to him. He knows how to get in touch with me. He can hit me up anytime. Like, I'm on LinkedIn. I can tell you right now, the amount of LinkedIn messages I get, I am the worst LinkedIn mailbox messenger person. I'm awful at it. So sounds like a job for an agent, right? So I just haven't taken the time to ask GPT to go build it and then hit my email inbox yet. But that's the best way to get in touch with me. Unfortunately, it's Stephen : so just like the body part, COLON. And then you can go on LinkedIn, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. I work with, in my W-2, I work with the public sector at the moment. And I work with a pretty large company that, does some really cool stuff with AI. So I'm excited about what I do. I really enjoy talking with people and helping them go through the implementation process and adequately go through the resourcing and planning and in going through that process. I do a bunch of other things too, but not in this context. Is it would bore everybody who's listening right now. The coolest thing that I get to do is I get to talk to people about stuff that I barely understood a few years ago, and it's really fun to go through the implementation phase.
And you're the shining example of what a knuckle dragging Marine can do, right? Is that right?
I'm Knuckle Dragon Marine, dude. I'm 100% that. That's exactly what I am.
Your podcast, is that what's going on with the podcast?
So we stopped producing episodes in 2023. Knucklehead podcast. We actually just decided to set sail. We had opened a studio here in Rockwall for the production agency that I owned, like a Knucklehead Media Group. Knucklehead Media Group went through a transition where we provided some consulting services for companies who were using content to go and scale their businesses through podcasts. We call that bringing dead leads to life through podcasting. So we still operate a small consultancy that helps with, like when you think of digital media, just a lot of those things that AI, quite frankly, is doing a better job at scale than some other designers at the moment. So we still do some small level engagements for small to medium sized businesses when it comes to consulting, specifically in that realm. But yeah, we produced almost 200 episodes for Knucklehead Podcast. Loved it. Had some incredible guests. One of my favorite podcasts was just listening to Dave Burke, he works for Jocko Willenick at the Echelon Front office. He did like an OODA loop process where he just did a little mini OODA loop in the podcast. So I sat there, I think I got in like 5 words that entire podcast. I just was like, all right, Dave, OODA loop, go. And it was amazing. It was like one of the coolest ones. So if you want to listen to that one, that one's cool. They're still out there. You can go listen to them and subscribe on a bunch. And then we produced a bunch of different other podcasts for companies, and those are really cool. I've had an opportunity to work with some really incredible people and some talented individuals. I couldn't be happier. I'm so fortunate to work with the people I get to work with. It's pretty amazing. So,
well, Stephen, it's the same here. I get to hang out with you for a little bit, and it's been a lightning moment for me. Bobby and Lucky, any departing thoughts?
Bobby?
I'm just thank you so much, Stephen, for all that you've done to move the community forward and to just really be an example of what the possibilities are, right? And I encourage everyone to be your own advocate, right? Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Get out there, try things, and before you know it, you'll find where you actually belong in this digital landscape. So,
that's good. That's a good summary, for sure. That was a great story about your son, too, man. That's awesome. That motivates me.
Lucky?
Yeah, no. We need more knuckle dragon Marines like you, my friend. In this space, we need more like you to be able to talk to the other guys out there to say, you know what, we can do this.
That's right.
There's people get stuck, fear what the other side is. And to have somebody that can just say, hey, man, and just reach out and say, hey, look, it's not that bad. Here, let me show you. And then be able to communicate that. I mean, you're the man. Thank you for today, Stephen. And I'd like to be able to have you on again and be able to go a little bit further into some of these roles. I know people would be interested in and understanding more, because right now, we're just spouting out, acronyms and jobs and roles, but to be able to break it down a little bit more and say, hey, this is, again, it's not that scary. And we need more knuckle dragging Marines to get there and say, okay, this is how it works and how it really works. Because it can be scary, but it's not. We just need someone to say, hey, look, just come to the other side. Oz, he was behind the curtain. He's just a little guy. It's not scary. We can all get this done. So thank you, Stephen.
So long as it's within the cybersecurity guardrails that you provide, Lucky, right? It's like you can't do anything without passing the cybersecurity folks and like, oh, are we good? We're good. We're good. Okay, we're not good. We'll stop. We'll go back to go. We'll pay the $200 or whatever the fine. I'm kidding, but no, I'm teasing you a little bit. That's awesome. Y'all are very gracious. Y'all give me way too many compliments. My wife is going to make my head go like right back down.
That's the job. That's the job.
That's the job.
Right. 100%. 100%. Well, I appreciate you.
Keep you grounded.
I really appreciate it. Happy to come back anytime. Lucky. Great.
Until next time. Ay.
Hey,